We're going to break down exactly how a massive, magnificent lake was literally wiped off the map. We'll trace the timeline of this man-made catastrophe, look at the terrifying health and ecological impacts, and then zoom out to see how this exact same crisis is threatening major water sources all over the globe today. You know, the sheer visual shock of this before and after is just wow. Imagine living in a thriving, bustling fishing town back in the 1960s, completely dependent on the water for your food and your livelihood. Fast forward to today, and those exact same boats are stranded in dry, cracked sand. The shoreline hasn't just receded a few feet, it's completely vanished, moving more than 60 miles away from where it used to be. It wasn't an accident and it didn't happen overnight, but the result is absolutely staggering. To really wrap our heads around this disaster, we've got to understand the starting scale. The RLC sits right between Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, and despite the name, it was actually a giant, landlocked lake with no connection to the ocean. We're talking about the fourth largest lake on the entire planet. For thousands of years, it was reliably fed by two massive rivers, the Amu Darya and the Sur Darya. This stable ecosystem thrived for millennia, right up until human intervention changed its course forever. In a span of just 60 years, 90% of the Aral Sea's original volume vanished. Just gone. And why? To grow thirsty crops, specifically cotton. Humanity essentially traded one of the world's greatest lakes for t-shirts and textiles. The river water was siphoned off by these massive canal projects in the middle of the desert. They did it so aggressively that the water never even had time to reach the lake, causing it to shrink at an absolute breakneck pace. So this wasn't an overnight thing. It was a slow march to disaster. It starts in the 1960s with those giant irrigation canals. By 2005, desperation led to the construction of the Kokorol Dam just to try and save the northern section. But the broader tragedy kept going. Fast forward to March 2025, and satellite images from the European Space Agency showed the eastern side is almost entirely gone. And that sets the stage for summer 2026, which is predicted to bring 10 to 12 massive toxic dust storms. It could potentially be the worst season ever recorded. And here's the wildest part. When that water vanished, it didn't just leave behind empty space. It birthed a brand new, highly dangerous landscape, the Aralkum Desert, which now covers an astonishing 24,000 square miles of what used to be a vibrant lake bed. To put that staggering 24,000 square miles into perspective for you, imagine an area roughly the size of the entire state of West Virginia. Picture every single mountain, forest, and city in that state entirely replaced by dry, exposed, barren earth. That is the sheer geographical footprint of the Aral Sea disaster. It's an expanse so massive that its environmental impact has actually altered the entire regional climate. And the consequences of this new desert, devastating. This isn't just an ecological tragedy, folks. It is a profound human crisis. High winds sweep across this massive dry ground, picking up decades' worth of agricultural salt, chemicals, and polluted dirt. These terrifying toxic dust storms blow directly into nearby towns and farms. They contaminate the clean drinking water, they poison the soil, totally ruining crops, and destroying tens of thousands of farming livelihoods. And worse still, the people breathing this air are suffering massive spikes in respiratory illnesses, anemia, and other severe health problems. It's honestly hard to overstate how fast this transformation happened. Take the historical Khwarezm region, located just south of the lake. This used to be an incredibly thriving area. Farms, wetlands, rushing rivers, rich forests, and really busy fishing communities. Today, observers describe it with one chilling word: post-apocalyptic. In just a few decades, humanity managed to completely ruin the climate, the economy, and the physical health of a massive region. But, you know, the people living in this toxic fallout aren't giving up. There's a desperate, multi-pronged approach happening right now to fight back. First, they're aggressively planting black saxol shrubs across the dry lake bed. These hardy desert plants act as an anchor, holding that toxic soil in place so the wind can't carry it away. Second, they're relying heavily on the Kokorol Dam, built to physically trap water in the northern small Aral. And third, they're completely changing how they farm, using a fantastic United Nations program that helps locals grow new types of rice requiring up to 40% less water. That's a real game changer. And thanks to these efforts, there's actually been a fragile glimmer of hope in the north. After the Kokerel Dam was finished, water levels in that section actually rose by 13 feet. The salinity dropped, and amazingly, fish populations began to recover, bringing some communities right back to life. But look at the other side of this. This progress is under extreme threat. As we approach summer 2026, intense evaporation and critically weak inflow from the Sirdarya River could drop those water levels right back down, making everything toxic and salty once again. It's a literal uphill battle. So, having seen the sheer scale of the destruction in Central Asia and the massive effort required just to stabilize a tiny fraction of it, we've got to ask ourselves a vital question. Is this just a unique, isolated incident? Could a man-made water crisis of this magnitude really happen anywhere else in the world? Sadly, the answer is a resounding yes. Zooming out to a global view, the exact same patterns of terrible water management, rising demand, and shifting climates are wiping magnificent lakes off the map everywhere. From Lake Chad in Africa to Lake Mead in the Salton Sea in the US, we're seeing the exact same environmental neglect playing out right now, and the consequences are devastating. Take Lake Chad in Africa, for example. It's experienced a hauntingly similar fate to the Aral Sea. Since the 1960s, a nasty combination of severe drought, rising temperatures, and heavy water use for farming has caused it to lose roughly 90% of its volume. This has led to critical food shortages, spreading diseases, and has displaced literally millions of people who relied on that water to survive. Let's move over to the United States and look at Lake Mead. This giant reservoir behind the Hoover Dam, right on the border of Nevada and Arizona, has been shrinking for years. And it's all due to massive long-term drought and completely unsustainable demand on the Colorado River. This isn't just about losing a weekend recreation spot. We are talking about the grid that powers our homes and the literal survival of booming American cities. It's sparking serious worries about whether the massive populations in the American Southwest will simply run out of drinking water. But there is some good news. Cities can adapt if they take the threat seriously. Ironically enough, Las Vegas, a city famous for desert excess, is a perfect example of conservation. Despite booming growth, they fought back. They ripped out huge, thirsty lawns, replacing them with desert landscaping. They engineered special deep water intake tunnels to pull water even if Lake Mead dropped to dangerously low levels. And the result? They succeeded in cutting their water use per person almost in half since the early 2000s. It really proves that conservation works when you actually implement it. Not everywhere is as proactive as Las Vegas, though. Look at the Salton Sea in California. Its story is basically the Aral Sea disaster repeating itself right on American soil. As farm runoff dropped, the massive inland lake dried out, exposing a highly toxic lake bed. Now, winds blow dust filled with heavy metals and agricultural chemicals directly into nearby towns. In some communities, people are literally breathing in toxic dust, causing serious heart and lung diseases. California has launched massive cleanup programs, but many experts are terrified they're acting way too late.